Shana Tova. Hopefully the stream hadn't started yet. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova. I mean, that's the way that we're human beings. We say things, we say silly things. Is everybody feeling comfortable with the air? It's echoing?
Yeah, we're a little empty. We're getting more people.
We're a little empty.
Don't worry.
It will be less empty sounding when you all join us in prayer. So let's go for that.
We're going to begin on page 110, singing of Matovu.
Please join us. Matovu, Matovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Matovu, 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 Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, V'ani b'rovecha zedicha, Ovo v'itecha, Eshitocha v'yelecha likodeshecha, B'yiratecha.
Let's hear you,
Matovu, join us.
Matovu. Matovu. Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael.
Adonai ahavti me'on beitecha, u'mikom mishkan kivudecha, mishkan kivudecha, va'ani ashtacha ve'echra, ivrecha lifnei Adonai. Oh, see.
Together with us. Matovu. Matovu.
Matovu. Ohalecha Yaakov,
Mishkenotecha Yisrael.
V'ani tefilati lecha, Adonai itratzon, Elohim b'rovecha sedecha, Elohim b'rovecha sedecha, Aneini bemet yishecha. One last time.
Let's hear you.
Matovu,
Matovu. Ohalecha
Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael. This is it. Matovu. How good it is to be here. Matovu.
Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael.
You sound good. It's good. It's good.
So Shana Tova, everyone.
Shana Tova.
Last night we gathered together for the first time, and there was a feeling in the room of a certain step forward. For 18 months, many of us have been tentative to come back. And so for many of us who it is our first time back in our sanctuary, we want to say welcome. And for those who are joining us virtually, we want to say welcome to you as well. We had about 150 people here last night with another probably 450 unique views on YouTube throughout the course of the evening. And so even though we are a bifurcated congregation with some in person and some virtual, we're all praying the same prayers around the same time, and we're all looking to the same sense of connection and divine. Now, you might notice that the two of us are not wearing masks. Please rest assured, when we are out in the congregation with you, we will be wearing masks, and we ask that anybody who comes up wears masks as well. We've been tested within the past 72 hours, which is why we feel comfortable leading without masks, and we are quite far away from you. But as we move into our service, take a moment, dwell on a prayer if it speaks to you. Allow yourself to be swept away by the melodies. And if you're at home, don't be afraid to sing, to raise up your voice. For those who are there in person, make sure you've grabbed a prayer book on your way in. And for those who are virtual, you can find in the email that we sent yesterday to the congregation a link to our prayer book if you didn't get a chance to come pick it up. And so we move now into our Psuke de Zimra section of our service, page 132, and we chant responsively the words of Ashrei. Ashrei Oshrei Betecha, Od Yahalelucha Selah.
Ashrei am shekacha lo, Ashrei am sh'Adonai Elohav.
Together, Tehillah LeDavid, Arumimcha Elohai HaMelech, Varvarcha Shimcha Leolam Va'ed.
Bechor yom avarchecha, v'alelah shimcha leolam va'ed.
Gadol Adonai Mula Meod, V'ligdulato Ein Cheker.
Dor
Ledor
ledor
Meshavach
yishavach
Maasecha,
ugevurotcha
Yagidu, Hadar Kevorodecha, V'divrei Niflotecha Asicha, Ve'ezuz Noratecha Yomeru, Ugdulatcha Asaprena, Zecher Rab Tuvecha Yabiu, V'tzidchatacha Yeraninu, Hanun Verachum Adonai, Erech Apayim Ugdol Chased, Tov Adonai Lakol, V'rachamav Kol Ma'asav, Yoducha Adonai Kol Ma'asecha, V'chasidecha Yivarchucha, Kevod Malchutecha Yomeru, Gvuratacha Yedaberu, Leodia Libnei Adam Gevurotav, Uchvod Adar Malchuto, Malchutecha Malchut Kol Amim, Umemshaltecha B'chol Dor V'Ador, Somech Adonai L'chol Hanoflim, V'zokef L'chol HaKufim, Einei Kol Elecha Yesaberu, V'yatano Hedin Lahem Et Ochlam Be'ito,
פותח את ידיך ומשביע לכל חי
רצון, צדיק אדוני בכל דרכיו, וחסיד בכל מעשיו, קרוב אדוני לכל קוראיו, לכל אשר יקראו באמת, רצון יראיו יעשה, ואת שבתם ישמע ויושיעם, שומר אדוני את כל אוהביו, ואת כל רשעים ישמיד, תהילת אדוני ידבר בי, ויברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד, ואנחנו נברך יה, מעתה ועד עולם, hallelujah. We turn our page 135, Psalm 150.
Aleinu, el b'kodsho, Aleinu, v'rekia uzo, Aleinu, v'gevuroto, Aleinu, kerov kudlo. Join us. Aleinu, el b'kodsho, Aleinu, v'rekia uzo, Aleinu, v'gevuroto, Aleinu, kerov kudlo. Hallelujah, בתק השופר, הללוהו, בנבל וכינור, הללוהו, בטוף ומחול, הללוהו, במינים ועוקב. הללוהו, בצלצלי, הללוהו, בצלצלי שמה, הללוהו, בצלצלי תרועה, כל הנשמה תהללו. Hallelujah, 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 בתק השופר, hallelujah, בנבל וכינור, hallelujah, בטוף ומחול, hallelujah, במינים ועוקב. One more time, hallelujah, בצלצלי שמה, hallelujah, בצלצלי שמה, hallelujah, בצלצלי תרועה, כל הנשמה תהללו, hallelujah, hallelujah. One last time, hallelujah, בצלצלי שמה, hallelujah, בצלצלי תרועה, all together, כל הנשמה תהללו, hallelujah, hallelujah.
We turn to page 142 as we rise together for the Baruch Hu.
Baruchu et Adonai, המבורך.
We're seated together.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorei choshech oseh shalom uvorei.
Now we're finally together. We can sing this in a round. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu. Second time. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu. Third time. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorei choshech oseh shalom uvorei et hakol. אמר ויהי ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות.
Earlier this summer, we asked our congregation to reflect on a series of themes, to give their thoughts on issues around love and freedom, around sins that we've collectively done, and ways that we might have grown throughout the course of the pandemic. And then, because we are such a talented congregation, we asked a series of our fellow congregants who are poetic to turn your answers into poetry. And so today, because our next prayer is traditionally a prayer that speaks about God's love, Steph Lurie took your words and turned them into a beautiful reading on love. So I want to call our readers up to read that reading now.
Journey to love.
It isn't my favorite word.
Some people are lucky to find love. Some people are lucky to have had love.
I'm drained a bit these days.
I do appreciate hearing words of gratitude. I feel love whenever I've been shown kindness, like when someone puts a hand on my arm to show they care. It could be someone I do not know.
I have felt loved when I am respected and shown consideration for who I am.
I have felt loved when walking in the woods, admiring the beauty of the mountains, or sitting at the seashore with my feet feeling the ripples of the incoming tide, breathing deeply the ocean air. Love is like sunshine after a gentle rain. The rain is refreshing, and the sunlight sustains me. In the light of the sun, I can be seen and known. Love is a rock, that solid foundation I can always count on being there when I walk through the world.
Love is allowing awareness of the life around me to be within me, seeing miracles wherever I look.
Love is the heart opening.
Love is a warm blanket holding us close to one another, a current that flows between people who connect in a meaningful way. It is comfort, protection, peace, and belonging.
Love is family, the look in my dog's eyes, a softball game, a Beatles song, a nicely turned out chocolate chip cookie, and the smile of a stranger. Love is uncontrollable laughter. It's like magic, filling me with gratitude for the euphoric sensation and awe for not fully understanding how it comes to be.
Love is saying yes to life.
And we conclude with this words of love, Baruch atah Adonai, habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava. Blessed are you, God, who have singled out your people Israel with love. Page 150.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kivud Malchuto Leolam
Page 152.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך.
והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
We're on page 163 and we read responsively. Remember the stories of slavery.
And you will never stop working for freedom.
Remember their fear at the edge of the sea,
And self-doubt will never defeat you.
Remember when desperation turned to celebration,
And you will never let go of hope.
Remember the words of the Baal Shem Tov. Forgetfulness leads to exile. Remembrance is the secret of redemption. We move to page 164 and sing that song of redemption, Mi Chamocha.
Please join us.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורות עילות עושה פלא. שירה חדשה שיבחו גאולים, לשמך לשפת הים, יחד כולם הודו וימלכו ויאמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
If you are able, we invite you to rise.
צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ופידי חינומך יהודה וישראל. גאלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Page 166.
אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך.
Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואימותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה, האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, כומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. זוכרנו לחיים, מלך חפץ בחיים, וכותבנו בספר החיים, למענך אלוהים חיים. הושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה.
Amen.
אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה מתים אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הדל. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ברופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים. ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישוע. מי כמוך אל הרחמים, זוכר יצוריו לחיים ברחמים. ונאמן אתה להחיות מיטיב, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה המתים.
Amen. Please be seated. In a moment, we're going to move into one of the more theologically problematic sections of our service. We're going to begin with Unetana Tokef, with a prayer that speaks about the power of this day and how God is judging us, counting us as if we are sheep moving to slaughter, deciding where we should go and who shall live and who shall die. And then we move into our next prayer, perhaps the more famous of the two even, where we speak about Rosh Hashanah, God judging us with a book open before God, deciding who should perish by fire, who by water, who by sword, who by beast. And this year, as it was last year, when we get to the line, who by plague, we will feel it in a way that we hadn't before. I've struggled with this prayer, as I imagine many of you have. And one of the ways that I deal with this is understanding that for our ancestors who penned this prayer, it was important to them that God has control of the universe, that the universe is not chaotic, that there is a power guiding us. I want us to pause for a second and think to ourselves, which world would we rather live in? A world where things happen for reasons but we don't know, or where chaos is around the corner, but yet it makes sense why good people perish and why bad people prosper? Neither is a good answer to the question. This is one vote. Judaism has other prayers that have the opposite. But on the High Holy Days, for our ancestors, it is important to embrace the idea that there is control in this universe, because it means we have control, and we might be able to change our destinies as well. Page 174.
תוקף קדושת היום, כי הוא נורא והיום, ובוא תנשא מלכותך ויקון בחסד קיסרך, ותשב עליו באמת. אמת, כי אתה הוא דיין ומוכיח ויודע ועד, וחותם וסופר ומנה, ותזכור כל הניסים הנשכחות, ותפתח את ספר הזיכרונות, ותפתח את ספר הזיכרונות. ומאליו יקראי וחתם יד כל אדם בו.
Page 176. And so a great shofar will cry, Tzikiyah. A still small voice will be heard. Angels in a whirl of fear and trembling will say, behold the day of judgment, for they too are judged in your eyes, even they are not blameless. All who come before the world pass before you like sheep before their shepherd. As a shepherd considers the flock when it passes beneath the staff, you count and consider each life. You set bounds, you decide destiny, you inscribe judgment. Page 178. Together.
וביום צום כיפור יחתמון, בראש השנה יקטמון, וביום צום כיפור יחתמון. כמה יעבורון וכמה יבראו.
How many will pass away from this world? How many will be born into it? Who will live and who will die, who will reach the ripeness of age.
Rosh Hashanah yikatemun, u'biyom tzom kippur yechatemun.
Rosh Hashanah yikatemun, u'biyom tzom kippur yechatemun.
Shu mivamayim, mivacherev umivachaya.
Who by fire and who by water, who by war and who by beast.
Mivarav umivatzama.
Who by famine and who by drought.
B'Rosh Hashanah yikatevun, u'b'yom tzom kippur yechatemun. B'Rosh Hashanah yikatevun, u'b'yom tzom kippur yechatemun. Mivarash u'mivamagefa.
Who by earthquake and who by plague. Who by strangling and who by stoning. Who will rest and who will wander. Who will be tranquil and who troubled.
Rosh Hashanah yikatevun, u'b'yom tzom kippur yechatemun. Rosh Hashanah yikatevun, u'b'yom tzom kippur yechatemun. Mi yishalev u'mi yityaseh.
Who will be calm and who tormented. Who in poverty and who in prosperity. Who will be humbled and who exalted.
Uteshuva, utefila, utzedaka, Mari vetroa hagizera.
Middle of page 180.
כן תהילתך קשה לי חוס ונוח לי רצות כאילו תחפוץ במות המת כי אם בשובו מדרכו וחיה ועד יום מותו תחכה לו אם ישוב ומיד תקבלו אמת כי אתה הוא יוצרם ויודע יתרם כי אסור לבדם.
We turn to page 184 as we rise together for the Kedusha.
נקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי ברום ככתוב על יד נביאך ויקרא זה אל זה ויאמר together קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוא כל הארץ כבודו אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו אחד הוא אלוהינו הוא אבינו מלכנו הוא משיענו והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו לעיני כל חי אני אדוני אלוהיכם ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהיך ציון לדור ודור הללויה לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד לך לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד לך ולנצח נצחים ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש ולנצח נצחים ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש לדור ודור לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד לך לדור ודור לדור ודור נגיד לך ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם לעולם ועד ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם לעולם ועד אקימל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה.
We're going to move forward now in our prayer book to page 202, and we remain standing for what is known as the Great Aleinu. Although traditionally done at the end of services, we have it here as part of our service as a way to mark God's majesty in the world. And it's customary, if you want, to go down all the way prostrate, the only time all year where one does that. And so if you want to more than just bow your head but go down onto the ground, I'll invite you to make your way into the aisles now, or if you're at home, to find a yoga mat nearby. We remain standing, page 202.
Aleinu לשבח לדון הכל לתת גדולה להוציא פרישית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
We remain standing now as we move into our Shofar service, the first of 3 different blasts throughout the course of the morning, page 206. And we'll begin with the blessing over the sounding of our Shofar on the top of that page. And I'd like to call Gary up now.
I'm really excited to hear the shofar.
Me too.
Genuinely. We ready? First, I have to make the bracha.
ברוך אתה, אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו, וציוונו לשמוע קול שופר.
Amen.
ברוך אתה, אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם. Join me. שהחיינו, מקיימנו, מהגיענו לזמן הזה. תקיעה, שברים תרועה, תקיעה, תקיעה, שברים, תקיעה, תקיעה, תרועה, תקיעה. Join me, bottom of the page. הרשת צפתנו ירב לפניך, אל רם רם וגידיסה. הרשת צפתנו ירב לפניך, אל רם רם וגידיסה. מבין ומאזין, מביט ומקשיב לכל תקייתנו, ותקבל ברחמים, ברחמים וברצון, סדר מלכויותינו.
Hayom Harat Olam. Today the world is born anew. This day the whole of creation stands before you to be judged. As we are your children, love us in the way of mothers and fathers, as we are yours in service. Guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness. We'll continue in private prayer from page 208 through page 220. And when you're finished, you can be seated. And for those who are joining us at home, you'll see a question on your screen should you decide that you want to reflect on that theme in addition to the prayers in front of you.
Eternal One, we who struggle with you, we yearn to understand and know you, and more than anything on this day, for you to hear our prayers.
We rise together as we move on to page 225, Avinu Malkeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu,
Chaneinu v'aneinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chaneinu v'aneinu, Ki ein banu masi. Avinu Malkeinu, we stand in awe, we draw close in love. Avinu Malkeinu, the power that passes through us and pervades all things. Avinu Malkeinu, the divine that is present within and among us. We move responsively from Hebrew to English.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema kolenu.
Together, Avinu Malkeinu, we speak this sacred truth aloud.
Avinu Malkeinu, chateinu lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, we stand as one accountable for our sins.
Avinu מלכנו חמול עלינו, ועלול עלינו וטפנו.
Avinu Malkeinu, we yearn for true compassion for our children, and most of all.
אבינו מלכנו כל ידוע וחרף ירב ועלי עלינו.
Avinu Malkeinu, may we resist the ravages of illness, fear, and despair.
אבינו מלכנו כל כל צר ומסתין מעלינו.
Avinu Malkeinu, let us summon courage to withstand our enemies.
אבינו מלכנו כותבנו בספר חיים טובים.
Avinu Malkeinu, let the goodness of this gift of life be engraved upon our hearts.
אבינו מלכנו חדש עלינו שנה טובה.
Avinu Malkeinu, may we taste anew the sweetness of each day.
אבינו מלכנו מלא את ידינו מברכותיך.
Avinu Malkeinu, let us wake up to the blessing already in our grasp.
אבינו מלכנו חנינו בנינו כי אין בנו מעשים. עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד והושיענו.
Avinu Malkeinu, however small our deeds, let us see their power to heal. May we save lives through compassion, generosity, and justice. And we reprise that melody that we began with, Avinu Malkeinu.
אבינו מלכנו חננו בנינו.
Avinu Malkeinu,
חננו בנינו כי אין בנו מעשים.
Together, Asei Imanu.
עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד. עשה עמנו צדקה וחסד והושיענו.
Thank you.
You may be seated. Thank you. And so it's my pleasure to call up the president of our congregation, Josh Katz, for some words of welcome to all of us.
Shana Tova. For everybody who's back for the first time, welcome back. And for anybody who's new, welcome in. A couple of years ago, several years ago, we were visiting Jill's family in Boston, and North Andover, really, which is a suburb of Boston. And while we were there, they just get walloped with a snowstorm. 18 inches or so, which I guess if you're from Boston, that's not a big deal. Like around here, the media dines out on that for 3 days, but there it's no big deal. What was unique about it, though, was it was like maybe the 10th storm that year. And they were literally running out of places to put the snow. There was a pile in her aunt's driveway that was so tall that Lexi, who was like my daughter, who was 9 years old, climbed to the top and dunked the basketball. But in Boston, the city especially, I mean, literally, no one knew where to put this stuff. They were taking front end loaders and pushing it out into the harbor because there was no room. And the next morning, I remember watching the mayor of Boston comes out of his house, which is not Gracie Mansion. It's like a house. It's like this little Boston house. And the guy comes out, and I'm going to do the Boston accent wrong, and I'm watching this guy, and he's got nothing. He's like, I don't know what to say, another wicked bad storm, and I told my wife, I don't know, and he just was, there was nothing there. And I definitely feel that. This is not the speech I was planning to give when the summer kicked off. This was going to be a triumphant return. And instead, most of the seats are empty, and we're all sitting here with masks, and it's weird, still. So I'm kind of like, oh, wow, I got nothing. And the rabbi started his sermon last night saying he's tired. But as I thought about it, you know, we as you know, we've pivoted, we've done things, we've moved on, we've tried it. And listen, you guys know, being the mayor of Boston is not nearly as hard as being the president of Temple Ner Tamid.
For sure.
You might have all of Southie complaining to you about the weather, but you know, try that. Put that up against 100 Jews from New Jersey complaining to you about the air conditioning, right? And I have something that he doesn't have, which is I have all of you, and we have each other, and we have them. And so we're gonna make it work. Again, we're gonna figure out ways back in for everybody. Some of you and your neighbors found out this morning that my way back in is driving around at 7 in the morning blowing the shofar. So I might have created a few anti-Semites this morning in Glen Ridge and Montclair, and some very unhappy dogs. But as you know, we're committed to making this work, to continue to making a place where you can come in, whether it's physically or virtually, with wide programming and a re-emphasis on connection. And that's my commitment to you. You know it's your clergy's commitment to you. And it's our professional staff's commitment. So, Shana Tova, welcome back, welcome in, and let's get on with it.
Let's do it. Shana Tova.
So we're going to move into Seder Kriyat Torah, to the reading of our Torah. We're on page 227. I'll invite us to rise together as we prepare to remove the Torah from the ark.
Ein Chamocha v'Elohim Adonai ve'ein k'maasecha Malchutecha malchut kol olamim u'memshaltecha bechol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch לעולם ועד. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. אבי הרחמים, היטיבה ברצונך את ציון. תבנה חומות ירושלים, תבנה חומות ירושלים, כי בך לבד בטחנו, מלך אל רם ונישא, אדון עולמים. אדוני, אדוני, אל רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטא ונקה. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Together.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh v'noro Shemo. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh v'noro Shemo. Gadlul Adonai iti uneromemo Shemo. לך אדוני הגדולה והגיבורה והתפארת והנצח והעול כי כל בשמיים ובארץ, כי כל בשמיים ובארץ, לך אדוני הממלכה, והמתנשא לכל לראש.
Please be seated. Next year, we are going to do the biggest hakafah in the history of this congregation.
Yes, we're going to cancel services, just have a hakafah.
Yes. In fact, if you want to join us for a hakafah that we feel comfortable doing, you can join us, of course, on Simchat Torah. We're shutting down Church Street as we did 2 years ago and giving people a chance to dance around with the Torah. But we will be getting back to it, we promise. So every year, we're blessed to have our Gabbai in our congregation, Robert Rich, who will call up our readers and our blesser. This morning, we're going to have one aliyot and have 7 different readers passing the yad, passing the pointer from person to person.
Yamdu kol ha'ba'alei kriya, Rachel Batley V'Miriasha, Jennifer Grayson, Nishama bat Abraham Basara, John Gary, Yochana bat Zachariah, Johanna Rosenfeld, Yehoshua Michal ben Zvi Vitziva, Josh Katz, Yishayahu ben Abraham Basara, Joel Doro, Yehuda ben Yosef, Jeff Fine, Asher Zelik ben Ruvain Eliezer, Miriam Ken Cohen, Yamod Rishon, Zobihan. Just stand back there. That's you.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch ata Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen.
Let me put my mask on.
Amen. Adonai, pakad tzara, kesher amar, vayas Adonai, lisara, kesher diber, vatar, vatilat tzara, le'avraham, bein lizkunav, lamoed, asher diber oto, Elohim.
Vaygra Abraham et Shem beno, asher alad lo, asher yada lo Sarah Yitzchak, ayamul Abraham et Yitzchak beno, ben shmonad yamim, Kasher Tzivaoto Elohim.
Johanna?
Yeah, okay.
Ve'avraham ben Ma'at Shana, v'hivaled lo et Yitzchak beno. I got lost already. Vatomer Sarah tzechok asali Elohim, Kol HaShomea Yitzhak Li.
Vatomer mi milel Avraham Hanikavanim Sarah Ki yaldati vein lizkunav Vayigdal hayeled Vayigamal Yasa Avraham Mishte Gadol Bayom Higamel et Yitzchak.
Vatera Sarah et Ben Hagar Hamitzrit Asher Yolda leAvraham Metzachek Vatomer leAvraham Garesh Hamazot Ve'et Ben Na Ki lo yirash ben hamazot im beni im Yitzchak.
Vayera davar mod ben Avraham al odot beno Vayomer Elohim el Avraham al yera v'necha al anar v'al amatecha kol asher tomar elecha sarashma bekola ki v'yitzchak yikare lecha zara.
V'gam et ben ha'ama l'gayasimenu ki zarachahu v'yashkem Avraham baboker v'yikach lechem v'chemat mayim v'yitein el agar sam al shichma v'yet ha'yeled v'yishalcheha v'telech v'teta v'midbar be'er shavah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nota b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Really impressive. I gotta say. We are going to take a moment. All of a sudden, I sound insanely loud to myself. There, that's better. We're going to take a moment to, thank you, to think of those who are in need of healing. As our Torah here in front of us, not because we are idol worshiping, but because we need all of the reminders that we can heal, that it's possible, all the reminders that we can take, that we can source from. Torah is our essential, that we can, that we will, and that we must. So we turn together. If you are joining us by Zoom, no, we're not on Zoom, forget that. But if you are here today and virtually or in the room, you would like to send up names of those who are in need of healing, aloud in your heart, anyone and any energy in the world that needs to know will know. So I'll pass my arm around the room, invite you. Thank you. Of course, our friends in virtual space as well.
We join together, if you'd like, to sing with me, and you somehow don't know all of the words to this, page 245. Mi sheberach avoteinu mikor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu mikol habracha liavoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of a body, the renewal of a spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Ya'amdu ha'magbia v'hagolelet. We rise together as we prepare to lift and dress our Torah.
וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה. ישמחו השמיים, ישמחו השמיים, השמיים, ישמחו השמיים, ותגל הארץ. Yiramayam, 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 Umelo, Yiramayam, 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 Umelo. One more. No, we're good. Perfect. Nala Shavat, you may be seated.
So in a moment, we're going to hear our Haftarah read, the blessings which you can find on page 247. And we actually have a creative rendition of the Haftarah itself, a kind of plain English translation that might be easier to follow along than the English translation in the book itself. But I want to actually say a word about the Torah portion and the Haftarah put together before we hear the Haftarah read, kind of contextualize what we just heard read and what we will hear read. In our Torah portion, part of the reason that we have it, because more than anything else, tomorrow's Torah portion, where God tells Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac on top of Mount Moriah, to make an offering, an olah, a burnt offering to him, and Abraham listens to God and does it, binds his son. God only stops him at the last minute. I would say that's the more classic, that's the more famous section. And so we ease into that section by hearing about Isaac's birth, and in a way that adds a little bit of drama to the story, right? If you've understood that Abraham and Sarah have been yearning for Isaac for so many years, and finally they get him, and you watch in our Torah portion a weaning ceremony as they celebrate his coming of age, his birth, then it makes it all the more so scary when God actually tells him to sacrifice this son. Now, I bring this up because in the Haftarah there's a parallel. You've got Hannah, who has been struggling with infertility just like Sarah had in our Torah portion. And she goes to the temple, to Shiloh, and she prays with all her heart for a child. And she gets granted that child, and that child becomes the prophet Samuel, one of the most important prophets of the Jewish people, who actually starts kingship in the Torah. Both of the stories have this in common, that with our deep yearnings, we can actually find that they can come to fruition. that what we feel is impossible could become. The impossible can be made possible. Each of us have yearnings in our own personal lives, but we have this kind of collective yearning to have our pandemic end, to search for miracles within this world, the miracles that science will win, the miracles of the human spirit, the miracles of perseverance. And one of the things that both of the Torah and the Haftarah have in common is the idea that God is listening, that God takes note of ourselves, that God does grant that which we want. Now, I don't know if I believe it, but I will tell you that I need that message sometimes. I need to feel like there is an ear out there ready to answer my call. And so whether I intellectually know or don't, whether I believe in a God like that or I don't, sometimes suspending disbelief and allowing myself to stand in the footsteps of Abraham and Sarah calling out for a child, for Hannah calling out for a child, and for all of those who have prayed for miracles, they give me inspiration to do that. And so again, the blessing is on page 247. And I want to call up both our English readers and our blessers now.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar b'nvi'im tovim, v'ratza b'divrehem hane'marim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher b'Torah, u'v'Moshe avdo, u'v'Yisrael amo, u'v'nvi'ei ha'emet b'tzedek.
We begin this book not with a proclamation of a prophet, but with the silent pain of a mother in waiting. Elkanah has two wives, Hannah and Peninnah. Peninnah was blessed with children. Hannah was not. This pained Hannah greatly. Though Elkanah loved her, he could not fill this missing piece of her life. Everything reminded her of the child she could not have, especially Peninnah in her subtle taunts and teases.
One day, Hannah ventured out to the temple at Shiloh in the hopes that if she prayed to God hard enough, God would hear her cries. Weeping, she vowed,
God, if you truly see me, if you notice my affliction, my pain, then please give me a son. I'll dedicate him to you. No razor will touch his head. He will be your servant forever.
Eli was the priest of Shiloh at the time and happened to be walking by Hannah. She was praying with such fervor that he thought she was drunk. Her lips were moving, but no words were coming out. But when he confronted her about her drunkenness, Hannah responded,
I have drunk nothing, neither wine or spirits. I am praying like this because I am in such sorrow. I am angry, I am hurt, and I want God to listen to me.
Eli heard her plea and felt for her. Go in peace, he said, and may God grant your request. Soon after, Hannah conceived a child, and she named him Samuel, which means, I asked God for him.
After she had weaned her son, Hannah returned to Shiloh, this time in celebration, and she prayed full-throated to God in joy.
Excuse me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Tzur kol olamim, tzadik b'chol hadarot, ha'el ha'ne'eman, ha'omer ve'oseh, ha'mdaber u'mkayem, shekol devarav emet v'tzedek, al ha'torah ve'al ha'avodah, ve'al ha'nevi'im, ve'al yom ha'zikaron hazeh, shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu lechavod u'tifaret. Al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach, umvarchim מברכים אותך, יתברך שמך בפי כל חי, תמיד לעולם ועד, ודברך אמת וקיים לעד. ברוך אתה אדוני, מלך על כל הארץ, מקדש ישראל ביום הזיכרון.
Amen. Shkoch. Shana tova. We're going to move now into returning actually, before we do that, our second of our 3 blasts of Shofar. We're on page 268, and we rise together again.
Tkiya Shvarim Trua Tkiya Shvarim Tkiya Tiki Trua Tikia Join us, Ashrei Tzifatiinu, Yarav Lefanecha, El Ram, Ram B'Nisa. Ashrei Tzifatiinu, Yarav Lefanecha, El Ram, Ram B'Nisa. Mevinu mazin, mavitu makshiv lekol תחייתנו ותקבל ברחמים וברצון צדק זיכרונותינו.
Hayom Harat Olam. Today the world is born anew. This day the whole of creation stands before you to be judged. As we are your children, love us the way of mothers and fathers as we are yours in service. Guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness. We're going to remain standing as we return our Torah to the Ark, page 277.
Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha, Venashuva, Venashuva, Chodesh, Chodesh, Yameinu
Please be seated. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
I remember the first time I was ever made to answer for Israel. Newly back from living in Jerusalem during my first year in rabbinical school, I ventured out to a friend's birthday party at a nearby bar in Prospect Heights, Brooklyn. It was a fun evening since I had gone to college with this particular friend, and I had many common acquaintances from Tufts. One of them, upon realizing that I had just gotten back from Israel, cornered me. With drink in hand, back up against a wall, I was asked to defend any number of accusations: the embargo on Gaza, the military presence in the West Bank, even decisions the Israeli army made during the 1948 War of Independence. It was less a conversation, I would have welcomed that, than a barrage. If you know me, you know that I'm a pretty liberal person. And that outlook includes the way that I see Israel. I was willing to cede her some points, hoping to add nuance to others, and ready to disagree about the remainder. But her goal that night was less to engage than to humiliate, less to dialogue than to conquer. She had no stake in the debate. It actually felt like it was an intellectual exercise for her. I'm a rabbi, so conversations like this is what I signed up for. But my experience isn't innate to my crazy ilk who choose to make Judaism a profession. I bet if I polled our current college students and even our high school students, most would have had the experience that I did at that party. And unlike me, they didn't sign up for it. And unlike me, they hadn't just spent a year learning about the history and the nuance. This past May was a trying time for so many of us, in part because we felt like we lost control of the conversation. I heard from teens and their parents who felt attacked in online forums. They knew the tweets and the sound bites leveled against them were unfair, but they didn't have the know-how or the tools to navigate the conversation. One member, who's very involved in social justice, told me about spaces where she was asked to denounce Israel as a sort of litmus test for involvement, even though their mission in this particular organization didn't involve anything international. Another, who posted prayers for family members running to bomb shelters in Israel, was dismissed outright. They were told that their fears were nothing compared to a mother living in Gaza. The climate that surrounds the discussions of Israel is not new. These conversations are actually a microcosm of a symptom, a general brokenness in our society. We lack the ability to engage in meaningful discourse. People in our society are generally not great at listening. We are strident and we are absolute in our views. We lack patience for subtlety. We are crusaders and prophets, zealots and ideologues. In a world that is actually blurry, nuanced, and multivalent, we expect well-packaged, easy answers to questions that defy lucidity. But the world is just not as simple and as clear as we want it to be. Israel is that problem on steroids. There's plenty wrong in Israel, but it is impossible to engage in those things when others cede you no space in the dialogue. This, by the way, is a problem both for defenders and detractors of Israel. When it comes to questions of Israel's security or to the rights of Palestinians, there is usually no middle ground. The question then is, what can we do about the toxic environment surrounding the Israel discourse, often on both sides of the aisle? How do we engage in meaningful and real conversations about the complexities on the ground when so many do not have the patience or the open-mindedness to do so? Today, I want to talk about 4 ways that we can shift the conversation to make it more productive. The first thing is a pragmatic solution. Figure out who to engage and who to ignore. Much of the time, we think that the people that we have to confront after a hateful or a harmful or an unfair thing is posted is the person doing the posting. But that's often a recipe for disaster. Online forums are the least productive places to have meaningful dialogue. And most people who post provocative things want a provocation. That doesn't mean that there's nothing you can do when someone is being hateful or unfair. If someone's abusing a platform, you have the right to question their ability to use it in the first place. Which is more effective? Arguing with someone who posts something inflammatory about Israel on a parenting Facebook group, or questioning the place of that comment in the group in the first place, whose mission is everything about local parenting and nothing about international policy? Then, instead of engaging the person posting, look to see who their audience is. You likely know many of them. It's these bystanders who are the ones who would benefit from the conversation. Call them up or text them and let them know that you want to talk, that what they saw online is more complicated than the angry soundbite, meme, or cartoon. Be patient and compassionate, and hear them out. And if you don't have the answers, then offer to explore the questions together. I'm always happy to recommend books or articles that give nuanced understanding of the conflict. The second way we can help promote complex and sensitive dialogue is to set up expectations and hold people accountable for the language that they use. Since platforms like Twitter only allow 240 characters to get our point across, most people will choose words that pack the greatest punch, even if they are misleading and dangerous. Words like genocide, Nazi, apartheid are useful to these detractors because they are sensational and provocative. But they also carry a history that is harmful to the discourse. Let's take genocide, for example. Let's leave aside the fact for a moment that the term is deeply offensive to us Jews. When it is employed against us, it evokes our painful past as a sort of linguistic cheap shot, meant to put us on the defensive and prove how we are actually different than our greatest enemy. Instead, let's ask how anyone could look at the events of Israel and think of genocide in the first place. The answer comes in one very broad reading of a definition of genocide by the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, who first defined the term after World War II. Their definition includes what one would expect, like the presence of mass killings. But it also includes some very opaque phrases, quote, imposing measures intended to prevent births within a group. Detractors of Israel, especially in academia, unfairly look at Israel's actions since 1948, and they employ an overly broad reading of these phrases. And they explain that any action that destroys not the physical body of the people, but imperils its culture, might be liable for the term genocide. If a group of people, say, are kept in poverty, if they lack access to education, if their lack of health care raises infant mortality, then these might be considered genocidal acts. Now, terms change, I get that. But the most dangerous thing about the approach that I just outlined from academia is that in the popular imagination, genocide still means what most people think it does: mass murder. And when we hear it, we think of Nazis, of Rwanda, of Darfur. Just because a small group of scholars views it differently doesn't mean the rest of us do. Even if someone cites the scholarly debate about the definition of genocide, after they are confronted about using the term, we shouldn't stand for it. It is, to use Jewish language, genivat da'at, deception and dishonest representation. I will talk to anyone about Israel, but I will not engage in conversations where this type of loaded language is present, and you shouldn't either. True academics who are using terms like genocide are trying to say something about, say, the underlying issues within the Palestinian community, be they education inequality, infant mortality, or widespread poverty. And I don't disagree with many of those critiques, though if we engaged in a dialogue, I might disagree on Israel's role in causing and helping to fix each of those things. But it's a lot more productive to talk directly about the problems they mean by the shorthand than to use the provocative coded language. The more specific our conversation can be, the more we can find common ground, and the more fertile and rich will be our dialogue. The third way that we can help promote complex and sensitive dialogue is to make sure that you and your conversation partner are actually having the same conversation. Now, one of the best books written in recent decades on the Arab-Israeli conflict is a book which is called Catch 67 by Mika Goodman. And it was actually a runaway bestseller a few years back in Israel. In it, he speaks about any number of tensions and paradoxes inherent in the Middle East debate, especially among Israelis on the political left and the political right. In one masterful example, he deconstructs a word that we hear often, occupation. I don't have to tell you that this is one of the more loaded terms within the Jewish community. For some, it explains clearly what's happening in places like the West Bank, and for others, it is anathema, and it shuts down conversation. However, what many don't realize, and Mika Goodman points this out, is that people mean many things when they use the word occupation. Goodman explains that when the political right in Israel, he's actually writing an internal book to the people of Israel, are talking about the status of the land of the West Bank, they are criticizing the use of the word occupation. They point to the fact that the land traded hands for generations, moving first from the Ottomans to the British to the Jordanians, and then eventually to Israel in 1967, who won it in a defensive war for their survival. How, they ask, can a land be occupied with a history like that? The political left on Israel, parties like Meretz, for example, they don't talk about occupied land. Instead, they talk about occupied people. They speak about the experience of Palestinians who can't freely travel from city to city without checkpoints, or whose houses might be commandeered by soldiers if a suspected terrorist is living next door so that they can do surveillance. They acknowledge that Israel has a right to defend herself, and at the same time understand that a people cannot be free and thrive with a military presence in their backyard. The problem with our modern discourse, says Goodman, is that we're having two different conversations. The Israeli left tend to speak about the Palestinian people when they say occupation, and the right makes claims about the land when they say the term. Both may technically be correct, but since they're always talking past one another, they will never actually talk to one another. The conversation becomes circular, even rehearsed. The debate is less rich than ritualistic. When we speak about hard topics, we have to make sure that we are on the same wavelength. The final way that you can help promote complex and sensitive dialogue is to make sure that you understand why you are having the conversation in the first place. Viktor Frankl, quoting Nietzsche, famously wrote, quote, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." We each come at the why of Israel in our own way. Some of us see Israel as the fulfillment of a 2,000-year-old yearning to come back home. Others see Israel as a safe haven for the Jewish people, should things ever get dangerous for us. Still others see Israel as the hallmark of living Jewish values. Israel's mission is to be the best example of our tradition and ethics, even if they may falter sometimes. Knowing why Israel matters to you will help you navigate the complexities on the ground, the how of Israel. Knowing why you care will help you understand where you should stand firm when challenged and what your non-negotiables are. They will also help you understand what you might compromise. If, for example, you are proud that Israel is a beacon of democracy in the Middle East and that it is a Jewish state, it's going to help you better articulate why a two-state solution is so critical for your identity, since only a two-state solution will preserve both values. If Israel exists to safeguard the Jewish people, should threats ever emerge, you are going to want Israel's government to be one that makes sacrifices to save Jews in far-flung places, even if it means doing the unpopular thing and attracting worldwide ire. If you start by looking at the complexity first, you're going to be mired in it. The details and nuance will cripple you. But if you start with the question of why does Israel matter to me, to the Jewish people, to the world, this is going to give you guidance to sift through the mess, choose principled sides and positions in any debate, and then be ready for the nuance when you visit it. And I want to help you do this. This past summer, so many people came forward looking for tools on how to best talk about Israel. And I want to make it my mission to give you those. For our students, we spent the summer figuring out how to insert Israel into certain grades in our religious school so we might have a nuanced, age-appropriate conversation. For adults, we will continue to bring in speakers and have programming that we have always done about Israeli politics and culture. But we will add to that 3 different things. The first, a weekly class on the history of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, taught on Wednesday mornings by me. Number 2, a trip to Israel this summer pending COVID and any rising variants. And 3, a series of giving circles where you and a group of 10 to 15 other congregants will pool a pot of money together and study nonprofits in Israel, deciding where your money will go. I'm especially excited about this initiative because it's going to force you to ask the foundational question, what about Israel matters to me? Often when someone asks you, tell me about Israel, you jump right into politics. But maybe Israel actually matters to you because of the culture or because of the rich religious texture of society. So when you seek to figure out where you will give your money away, you will direct it to those initiatives. This initiative will help you wrestle with the bigger questions of the Jewish state. When I first wrote to you this past summer about the war in Gaza, a young adult member of our congregation replied to me. She was upset that throughout her life, people had been telling her that Israel is too complicated to talk about. And I was saddened by her email. Israel is complicated, no doubt. And the conversation is made even harder by so many voices on all sides of the debate who are deaf to nuance, zealous in their opinions, absolute in their stances. But sitting out the conversation means that your voice is silenced, and that is unacceptable. Within the complexities of Israel dwell some of our most important moral tensions between care for the self and care for the other, between justice and mercy, between trust and fear. Roll up your sleeves and get involved. Get engaged. Read everything. Watch nuanced videos online. I'll give you a place to start. ispeacepossible.com, an amazing set of videos outlining all of the major nuanced issues around whether there could be peace in Israel. Think deeply. Don't run from discussing Israel. Many of us will find ourselves in a position when someone will ask us about Israel. Even if you disagree, even if it's hard, even if what they say may seem unfair, even if it makes your blood boil, engage. The world needs more thoughtful, nuanced people like you. Israel is too complex to not have you in the conversation. Shana Tova. And so we're going to move now into the final of our 3 shofar soundings. We'll rise once again and turn to page 284 for our shofar service.
Tekiah, Shvarim Teruah, Tekiah, Tekiah, Shvarim, Tekiah, Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah Gedulah. שר שצוותנו ירב לפניך, אל רם רם וגנדיסה, הרי שצוותנו ירב לפניך, אל רם רם וגנדיסה, מבין ומאזין, מביט ומקשיב לכל תקייתנו, ותקבל ברחמים וברצון סדר שופרותינו.
Hayom Harat Olam. Today the world is born anew. This day the whole of creation stands before you to be judged. As we are your children, love us in the way of mothers and fathers. As we are yours in service, guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness. We'll remain standing, page 286, Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא.
May the time not be distant, O God, when all shall turn to you in love, when corruption and evil shall give way to integrity and goodness, when lies and bigotry shall no longer enslave the mind, nor idolatry blind the eye. So may all created in your image become one in spirit and one in friendship, forever united in your service. Then shall your dominion be established on earth and the word of your prophet fulfilled. Adonai will reign forever and ever.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
We remain standing as we turn to page 292, and we think of those that we've loved and who we have lost. For some of us, this year has been a painful year, knowing that loved ones and family members that we used to spend last holidays with are no longer with us. For others, we miss people long gone. But we take a moment at each of our services, and especially over the High Holy Days, to invoke their memory, to bring them into the room with us. And so, as my eyes go around the room, I'll invite you to share names of people for whom you're thinking. Page 294. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, v'yamad divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyom echon uv'chayed l'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amin. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olamei almaya, yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei Kedusha b'rechu. Leila uleila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiram b'yama v'imru amin. Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amin. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amin. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. As together we say, amen. Please be seated. So before we move into our closing song, a few announcements scheduled for the rest of the day. So we have a little bit of time for us to clear out. What we'll ask is that I hope that you'll take opportunities to meet people, to say hello, but if we could do that in the hallway, that would be very helpful so we could flip the room and give ourselves a chance to get ready for our next service, which starts at 11 o'clock. In addition to that, the schedule for the rest of the day is that in addition to our second service and Biachad's second service, at 2 p.m. is our Tot service, and at 5 p.m. we're going to be in Clark's Pond for Tashlich. It's already going to be, I think, one of the better attended Tashlichs we usually have. It's usually us and 30 of our best friends who show up. But I think, yes, people are craving the outdoors. They're craving the ability to be together in the outdoors. And so we hope that you'll join us. It's at Clark's Pond again. Basically, go to the middle school. You'll find us. If you get there after us, just walk toward the line of trees, and you'll see a stream, and we'll be right at the stream at the middle school.
Bring crumbs.
Bring crumbs. And potentially boots, because it might be a little bit muddy. We're not sure.
But you should wear your boots.
Yes. In addition to that, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., we've added a service to our retinue of services. It's a children's service outside at 9 a.m. In the tent, which I'll be leading, and then at 10 a.m., it's our second day service, which usually has many musical guests and is a really wonderful, exciting time.
Lots of fun things in store.
Exactly. I'll invite us also on our way out to pick up one of these bags that you'll see outside. That is a bag that we hope that you'll fill up with food, bring back on Yom Kippur. We'll have a truck outside, and if you're joining us virtually, you can pick up a bag anytime this week and drop it off during Yom Kippur as well. And you can make sure that we deliver, as we do every year, a large amount of food to the Human Needs Food Pantry post-holiday. We have a lot going on Yom Kippur as well. We hope that you'll check out our website and see. And if you feel inspired to come back in person, if you're joining us virtual and you want to come, we still have room. And we understand that we have many different ways to pray. And so for those who are here, I want to say thank you for coming. And those who are virtual, I want to say it's been a pleasure to spend this morning with you over the internet. And so with that, we're going to end this morning.
We are going to end with a blessing for all the possible ways in which we can know peace this year. So let the first one just be the one that you take in. You can sing it the second time with me. May God bless you with all good. May God keep all evil from you. And may God fill your heart with wisdom and grace you with all truth. May God lift up God's merciful face and shine on you for all time. And may God bless eternal peace. Now feel free to join us. All together, you can bless the people next to you. May God bless you with all good. May God bless you with all good. May God keep all evil from you. And may God fill us with wisdom. And may God fill our hearts, I think, with wisdom and grace you with all truth. May God lift up God's merciful face and shine on you for all time. And may God grant you eternal peace. Eternal peace. Make sure to introduce yourself to someone new, to thank any of our staff and ushers that you see on the way out, especially Michelle W. Malkeinu and our president, Josh Katz, for all their work. And in addition to that, for those who are virtual, please email us to say hello. Shana Tova.